Yadhagne Dahiga Shakti Ramakrishna Sthidahya Sarva Vidya Surubam Stam Sharadam Pranamamyaham. Good morning and welcome. Morning. Many of you, maybe first time, most welcome. So, the topic for discussion, as all of you know, is the wisdom of the Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi. We will have 1 hour discussion, talk, and then, of course, interaction. So, you are most welcome to ask for clarifications. Most of you know, you're familiar with the life and teachings of Holy Mother. Now, the strangest thing about Holy Mother is she is so totally unlike her traditional acharyas and avatars. So, in fact, you have 2 types of spiritual teachers in the world. There are those who are, we call acharya, the great exponents of philosophy, those who wrote marvelous metaphysical canonical works like Shankaracharya and so on. And then there are those who are mystics, who are not well known for great creative writing in mystical or philosophical literature. Those who reached some kind of transcendental experience and spoke and taught from that standpoint. Now, Holy Mother doesn't belong to any of these categories. If you look at her life, you find on the one hand, she was a nun. On the other hand, she was a mother. Now, how can these 2 apparent contradictions meet together? She was a nun and she was a mother. And only a nun can be a mother in the spiritual sense, She was mother in the most transcendental spiritual sense of the term. She is the mother of the whole universe. Now, in our Hindu Vedanta tradition, and that is true of many of the ancient civilizations, mother is the central figure in the household. That is, in fact, the instruction given to a student who, after his completion of 12 years of Vedic education in the ancient Vedic Gurukulas, when they return home, the first instruction, Matri, devo, bhava. So there is an ancient Vedic convocation address, Vedam anucha acharya andevasinam anushasti satyam vada dharmam chara satya na pramadidavyam dharma na pramadidavyam. This is one section which deals with the ethical, moral and spiritual doctrines that should guide our life. The second part of the convocation address deals with how we must live in our life, in the family. How we should and we can practice spiritual values in the family structure. A person may be a husband or wife, mother, or grandmother, grandfather, father, whatever may be your role, you can be spiritual. So, the Matri Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Aditi Devo Bhava, the 4 instructions, we are focusing on the first one. The first instruction that every civilized human being should learn is, you should respect your mother. But literally it means, let your mother be God to you. Matri Devo Bhava means, let your Deva itself has got a unique meaning, much more than somebody who creates this world and sitting above the clouds. No. Deva, actually the word Deva means the divine reality present in all of us. To fully understand the meaning of Deva, the first effort in linguistics, in lexicography, is called Niruktam. So Niruktam was written by a great teacher, lexicographer called Sayana, who wrote around in the 16th century BC. There he defines the word Deva based on the dhatu, the Sanskrit root Dev. means devo danadva dyotanava dyotanava dusthanava. Danadva means Deva is the one who answers your prayers, who gives you what you ask for. Deepanadva means Deva is the one who sits in your heart and light and kindles the light within you. So Deepanava. Dyotanava means it's effulgent. It's very nature of effulgence. And Dusthana means the celestial, living the celestial world. Sthana. Dusthana means the one who lives the celestial world, the heavenly. So Deva is a person, is a divine reality that is Deepanad, the spiritual light within us. And it is from the mother that you get your first light. Because when a child looks at somebody, the first face the child sees is mother's face, not father's face. And the child never learns from mother, the child imbibes from mother. And imbibing means going deeper, making your nature. So that's why mother is one who lives in the heart as the eternal teacher, the one who kindles the light, the transcendental, belonging to the transcendental plane called Dusthana. And Dyotanad is self-effulgence, and Deep and Dana means is mother who gives you food. The first food is from mother. So that's why mother is so important. I can just give an idea of the respect that a mother deserves in the family. It comes from Manu. Manu was one of the ancient lawgivers. You know, there is a reason why I'm quoting Manu. He wrote almost 6,000 years back. And much of the problem of modern civilization is our family life has become fragmented, is completely collapsed. And it can be rebuilt only on the basis of a transcendental mother ideal. On the one hand, the divine spiritual ideal of the mother. On the other hand, in the family setting, mother is the one who actually lays the foundation for our not only spiritual life, but even material life. So that's why Manu says, Upadhyaya Dashacharya Acharya tu Sadam Vida Sagasrena Adhigam Madhu Gauravena Adirichyade. This is Manu says, Upadhyaya Dashacharya. Upadhyaya is a person, a guest lecturer in a university, who comes and gives you an occasional lecture focusing on a special topic. That is Upadhyaya. And Acharya is like a head of the department who actually makes arrangements for inviting guest lecturers. Actually. So the respect to be given to the Acharya is 10 times the respect that you should give to your Upadhyaya. So Upadhyaya is an approximation to a teacher. Upa itself is a prefix means Upa Samibhye Sanitya, approximation, nearby, close by. So the respect to be given to a teacher is 10 times the respect you should give to the lecturer, occasional instructor. And the respect to be given to father is 100 times. Acharya tu shatam pita. The respect you should give to your father is 100 times as much respect as you give to your teacher. And the respect to be given to mother is 1,000 times the respect you should give to the father. So that's why Sagasranam tu Pitrun Mata Gauravena Adirichyade. There is another version, part of it. That means, so Sagasranam tu Pitrun Mata. So if you multiply the respect you should give to your father by 1,000, that's the respect a mother deserves. Now, that's why mother is the central figure. Now, about the importance of Holy Mother is, as I mentioned, she was a nun because she was the transcendental divine mother. So she was a nun. At the same time, she was also the archetypal mother figure. If you want to get an idea of the importance of mother, you can, if you look at the history of the Ramakrishna mission, there are 2-3 well-known books written. There you find, after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, mother played the most important role. Mother was just 33 years when Sri Ramakrishna passed away in 1886. 33 years, and she lived for 34 years longer. Now, after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, it was Holy Mother who actually was the head of the monastic order. And the monastic order contained men like Vivekananda, who according to W. Wright was the most learned, much more learned speaker and orator than all the delegates who attended the Parliament of World Religion in 1893 in Chicago. So you can imagine, Vivekananda was arguably the most brilliant graduate of the university of his time and was the overnight celebrity, not because of oratorical skills, but because of spiritual and scholarly powers, accomplishments. And that Vivekananda thought it necessary to take the blessings of this mother before he decided to come over to the West. And he sincerely believed it was mother's blessings that enabled him to give the Chicago address. So if you look at the history of Chicago address, you find something very interesting. Dr. Barrows has brought out 2 volumes, which are the Proceedings of the Parliament of World Religion, 1893. Very, very learned work. There are scores of very important, marvelous lectures given by the most famous Christian scholars, Buddhist scholars, including Hindu scholars like P.C. Majumdar and others, Jains and many others. And he considered Swami Vivekananda's address as the most marvelous address. Vivekananda never actually thought of what he was going to speak. He was scared of giving a talk in such a big audience. He was terribly afraid. And he tried to postpone his speech. And when he had to speak eventually, he just got up and uttered a prayer to Divine Mother. Divine Mother, Goddess of Saraswati. Ya kundendu tushar haradhavala, ya subhravasta. That is supposed to be the prayer. We don't know. That is but is one version according to historians. And he just invoked the presence of the Goddess of Learning. And he gave a talk which became so unique. It's actually the beginning of Vedanta movement and the spread of Oriental culture, spiritual tradition, Oriental spiritual tradition in the West. Now, what was this mother? The mother never went to university, never went to school. All that she learned was little bit of language skills, just reading Ramayana in her own domestic setting, reading some old mythological books. But you find in Holy Mother, in her dealings with many of the administrative problems of Ramakrishna mission, a unique synthesis of spirituality and administrative skill. That is something which many of us, I'm going to deal with that subject right now. You find a unique kind of spiritual common sense. Spiritual common sense is different from common sense of any other type. Spiritual common sense will give you an insight into the nature of things. You get the first-hand information, knowledge about the things of the world, even about how an organization should function. The problems of a mighty, big spiritual organization, which had monks like Vivekananda, Swami Turiyananda, who came to Shanti Asrama, Swami Tirunadhidananda, who built the first Hindu temple of San Francisco. All these monks were members of the organization, and this mother, who came from a rustic village, who had very little of modern education, was the one who inspired them, who taught them, who solved their problems, their administrative problems. There were occasions when even monks like Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shivananda, all of them had to approach mother to get an insight. So what this means is, when you reach the level of spiritual illumination, you develop a kind of unique spiritual common sense. That's what you find in mother's life. And I shall just begin by reading a few important sections from Holy Mother's life. So that's the so some of the teachings. Now, just a few examples. I am reading from this well-known book, The Gospel of Holy Mother. It's a very unique book. Any of you who are interested, you can read. Now, you know, the Ramakrishna Mission was the first monastic organization which started philanthropical activities in a very organized way in Indian tradition. Monastics or monks were supposed to receive service from society and not give service to society. So if you go to India, traditional Indian ashramas, they'll be horrified. Monks are running a school or a hospital, terrible. Monks should be invited to their home by householders, should be given food, should be given all services. How can there be a monastic organization of monks dedicated to doing service for society? In 1912, a disciple told Holy Mother, "Some say that hospital work, selling books, and accounting are not proper work for monks because the master did not do such work. A monk is supposed to perform worship, japa, meditation and kirtan, which turn the mind to God. Other mundane activities turn the mind away from the world." So monks are supposed to stay in a cloistered monastery, in a forest hermitage, receiving service from society, being looked upon by society. In fact, Manu himself, the ancient Manu, lawgiver himself, had a statement, "Grihasthasu yada pasyet valipalidam atmanaha apatyasya apatyam tada aranyam samasayet." So an householder, when he grows too old, growing grey hair, wrinkled face, blackened teeth, instead of reversing the metabolism, whitening the teeth and blackening the hair, an householder should go to a forest hermitage, accompanied by wife, and should live in a hermitage, do meditation, spiritual practices. This is the old way. So you should remember, Vivekananda, when he founded the Ramakrishna, he was bringing about some kind of a spiritual organization in the history of India's monastic tradition. Of course, in Christian tradition, hospitalers were there, during the Crusades, hospitalers and Templars. There were different Franciscan, Dominican monks who were involved in different kind of other activities. But in Indian tradition, Vivekananda was a kind of a revolutionary. So, a monk is supposed to perform worship, japa, meditation, which turn the mind to God. Other mundane activities turn the mind away to the world. Holy Mother listened and then said firmly, "How will you pass the whole day without work? Can anybody practice japa and meditation all 24 hours of the day? You are referring to the Master's life. His life was different. Madhu provided nourishing food for him. So, now this is something very important. How do we, or when do we begin our spiritual life? You can easily find out for yourself. You just go to your room and meditate. You, let us say, just try to meditate. You won't be meditating on God. Because for a beginner, the mind may not easily cooperate with you. But if you do chanting, mind may cooperate. If you read a holy book, no problem. But if you close your eyes and try to shut down your 5 senses of perception, then the mind will bring up all kinds of undesirable tendencies, impressions, which we never really bothered about to think. So all the accumulated dirt and filth from the lower layers of the mind will come to the surface, and you feel distraction. Which means our mind is not right now ready to meditate. But mind can be made ready. The reason why our mind is not willing to cooperate in our effort to meditate is, mind also contains a lot of samskaras and vrittis which are not conducive to spiritual life. The mind also contains a lot of samskara which are extremely helpful and very conducive. That's why we have an inclination, we have an interest to start spiritual life. We feel like reading a holy book. We feel like doing some puja or even a desire for meditation. It's all because there are samskaras in our mental system called chittam which are very helpful. But we feel friction and conflict because there are samskaras which are not so very helpful. So the only way to reduce friction, to reduce the conflict between what we want to do and what our mind is willing to permit us to do, is to increase the balance of positive samskaras. Now, how do we generate, how do we create positive samskaras? There are different ways. We can do physical work, we can do intellectual work, you can read. If you cannot read, you can take some tools and in a place a temple. You can clean the shrine. That one day will help you to meditate better. Because these activities, if you are still more advanced, you can read a book. But reading a book is more complicated, more subtle than physically cleaning the courtyard of the temple, which anyone can begin. So I know one gentleman who underwent police training for some months, and the training became so brutal and he found it so inhuman, he had to learn how to beat people. So he didn't like it. So he used to come to the ashrama where I was associated with the ashrama, and every day he used to work very hard in the garden. And he was a huge muscular fellow. He will attend the prayer, but he seemed to be not so much interested. But he was immersed in doing physical work, removing the weeds, the grass, everything. And he told me that he derived a great satisfaction by doing this work. That is a kindergarten of spiritual life. So physical work can generate spiritual energy. And that way you can generate samskaras, vrittis. Every action, every karma produces a vritti. Vritti becomes a samskara. Samskara becomes a vasana. And these tendencies, samskaras and vasanas, constitute our mental system. So if you have a problem with the mind, the best thing to do is do some good work. If you cannot do work without any selfish desire, do some very good work with a selfish desire. That's far better than doing nothing. There's an interesting incident in the Gospel. Sri Ramakrishna says, A guru asked his disciple to bring a glass of water. The disciple told the guru, I won't bring you a glass of water because if I bring water, I'll be proud. I brought you a glass of water. I won't drink water. And the guru died of thirst. So, if you go to Gita, you find Lord Krishna never tells Arjuna to practice karma yoga at the beginning. That's something many people have the wrong notion. Gita talks about karma yoga and how can we practice karma yoga? I mean, disinterested work, non-attached work. No. The first instruction that Lord Krishna gives to Arjuna is, Arjuna, do some good work with a strong selfish desire. If you cannot do it without selfish desire. And he says, if you don't do your duty, people will make fun of you. Akirtim chabi bhudani kadaishendite avyam sambhavyadasya akirtihi maranat adirichade. The second chapter. The second chapter begins with a long instruction on how to do a good action, at least with selfish desire. And then Lord Krishna talks about the problems of doing action with selfishness. So it's better to do without selfishness. And then karma yoga, karma nishtha, jnana prada. That's how the evolution. So no one begins at the Harvard or Oxford. You have to begin with the kindergarten. That's why mother says no one can keep quiet without doing anything. Now, so what is the importance of karma yoga? Karma yoga helps you to change your character, to generate spiritual energy, to reduce conflict, and also you will be beginning to evolve in your spiritual life. This is the importance of doing work. There are many, many instructions. Another important reason according to mother is we begin our spiritual life with physical activity. So that could seva, all that. Because when we want to do intellectual or spiritual activity, there will be more conflicts. But when we do something at the physical level, there will be less conflict. But the only important point that mother stresses is karma should not be our goal in life. Karma should not be a goal in life. That's a big problem. Very often people have this wrong notion. I have done a wonderful work. That's the end of it. If after doing the wonderful work, if you feel an inner contentment, serenity and satisfaction, that means our action has purified our mind, our actions have processed our mind, our physical activities have generated spiritual wealth. If we do not feel inner serenity and peace, that means our actions have some problem. So karma should not be the goal, but karma is the natural beginning stage of every spiritual seeker. This is an important instruction from mother. I can read a few more important things, There are a few important incidents in mother's life. Mother talks about meditation and work. And in the process, she says, she always prays to work. She says, without work, the mind can be a very tricky phenomenon. Mind can be our enemy. So mind can be our friend. Mind can also be our enemy. Mind can become a friend only when mind is purified, mind is ready to do spiritual practice. So in this context, mother has got one very interesting instruction to give. She says, there's an interesting conversation here. A disciple asking mother, I have been practicing asanas for some days to keep my body fit because that will help me to work better. It helps in digesting food and in maintaining continence. Then mother replies, if you practice them too much, your mind may be attached to the body and your mind may get attached to work itself, and you may consider work as the goal of human life. Keeping this in mind, act accordingly. So this is a direct instruction in yogasanas. So we may imagine that work is important. Physical perfection of work is the whole of human life. That's the main problem here. The main difference between the concept of perfectionism of work in Western tradition, especially Kantian tradition, critique of pure reason, and karma yoga. That's what mother is bringing out here. See, one may wrongly imagine that if we can do a work that we are undertaken to the highest degree of perfection, a wonderful garden or a wonderful structure, have done the work to the utmost degree of satisfaction. Now, after doing that kind of work, if our mind naturally turns to God, then that work has a meaning. Otherwise, it's just like a wheel that goes on rotating. So, for a spiritual seeker, work means not only perfectionism at the physical level, but also it does something to our mind. It, as I mentioned earlier, generates spiritual wealth. And the spiritual wealth expresses itself as contentment and satisfaction, which in science called kridakrityada and kridarthada. When we do a work, and if that work gives us a feeling, well, I have done my duty, and if it gives us complete satisfaction, then there is a spiritual element to that work. On the other hand, if it doesn't take us to a higher level, if it doesn't enable us to think of God or spiritual values, then that work is okay, it is some kind of perfectionism at the physical level. That is not enough. That's why mother used to tell again and again, you need a strong body, so yogasana may be helpful. But yogasanas also can be a problem because, as you know, I don't have to mention this, there's a different context. Any kind of yogic exercises or any practice for generating physical or nervous energy without first being established in yama niyamas, without the practice of yamas and niyamas, can be disastrous. So, mother used to mention this, and in one of the talks, Swami Apurvanandaji, who was a disciple of Holy Mother, referring to this incident, mentioned again and again, referring to Patanjali yoga system, yamas and niyamas prepare our mind and nervous system and our energy system for proper utilization of our resources. So, for example, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, parigraha, 5 yamas, and shauja, santosha, tapasya, adhyaya, iswar pradhana, niyamas, 10 disciplines are mentioned. If a person does a lot of work with the purpose of achieving the highest degree of perfectionism, lot of energy, but without practicing these disciplines, then what happens, the tendencies already accumulate in the mind become energized. A person who has not practiced ahimsa, non-violence, he may develop violent tendencies. A person who has not practiced freedom from greed, for example, asteya and aparigraha both together, that person, if he practices many of these disciplines, can develop greed, and a strong tendency to possessiveness. People who have not practiced other moral disciplines can develop perversions, perverted habits. So mother says, if you practice them too much, your mind may become attached to the body. That becomes a problem. So physical work can be a problem. Physical work also can be a liberating factor. Physical work can evolve to intellectual work. When we go on doing karma yoga with a noble purpose in mind, then our mind will develop a tendency to do something sublime, you find. So physical actions suddenly generate a kind of mental faculty, a tendency, what you call vrittis and samskaras, which will help us to the next stage in spiritual unfoldment. So if people are not interested in reading good books, higher books, mystical books, it's because their physical actions have not helped them to generate spiritual food. So physical energy, when utilized for a noble purpose, will produce spiritual energy. And that will have a churning effect, a refining effect, a purifying effect. It will process our mental energies. And that will help us to develop higher interest in higher spiritual practices. Then what happens in spiritual life, we feel less and less conflict. Because as we generate more spiritual tendencies and vasanas, the power, the influence of negative tendencies will become weakened. That's why people develop the spiritual tendencies. Then mother says, always remember the master is the only protector. If you forget this, you will have trouble. Do you know why I inquired about your family so much? I first heard from Ganen that you had lost your mother. Here mother is talking about human relations. That's a very important instruction that mother gives, the importance of family structure. Mother says. So I asked him about the close relations with your mother, whether she has the means to maintain herself and whether she can manage her affairs without you. When I heard that she can pull on even without you, I felt relieved. So mother shows her natural affection and sensitivity to the problems of monks who have left their homes to become monks. You can find many instances where mother displays this unique character. And she gives the example of Shankaracharya, she gives the example of Sri Ramakrishna. Shankaracharya, before he left his home when he was less than 7 years to become a monk, he had promised his mother when the mother was passing away, he will be close to her and pacify her. And Sri Ramakrishna himself was so devoted to his mother that when he went to Vrindavan, he forced himself to come away from Vrindavan, which is his favorite place of pilgrimage, because his old mother was staying close to Dakshineshwar. So even in the context of monks, mother used to mention that looking after one's own family obligations is very important in spiritual life. So you can find this unique sensitivity of mother in her dealings with the disciples and also administrative matters. I want to give a few more important instances which in a way throw out some unique characteristics of mother. Just a minute. You see, one must bear everything because it is all due to cause and effect according to one's karma. Now we are talking about karma. How karmas operate in our life. You can find some unique instances. Karma counteracts the effects of one's previous karma. If you do a good act, it cancels the effects of your evil deeds. If one prays, takes the name of God and thinks of Him, the effects of evil are cancelled. Mother tells again and again that good actions, good spiritual practices, even if they do not help you to reach God immediately, it will have a sudden effect in our destiny. If a person, for example, has done some unpleasant deeds in the past life and is destined to face some tragedies, the nature of the tragedies will change. The intensity of that tragic fate will be changed. If a person is destined to be bitten by a cobra, he may be bitten by a less poisonous snake. He can be easily cured. So if he is destined to be bitten by a snake, be bitten by a water snake. Or it may even further go down and it may come down to the level of being eaten by an ant or an insect. Which means, on the one hand, karmas help us to process our mind by generating physical energy and then spiritual energy. On the other hand, karma also helps us to reduce the intensity of what we are destined to suffer. In this context, you find our Vedanta scriptures also give some very interesting flashlights, importance of good actions. It's called prarabdha karma. So this is something that bothers people in modern times. The whole concept of karma is divided into three categories. It's called sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, and agamika karma. So I'm not going into the details of this. Karma as a whole is like a huge, let us say, huge bag of karmas. Karmas here doesn't mean actions, but results of actions. Karma phalas, it is called. Suppose the whole karma phala, the results of actions, tendencies, impressions, and samskaras constitute one single entity. It is divided into three categories. One is sanchita, the prarabdha, and agamika. Agamika karmas are yet to come. The other karmas are divided into two categories. Certain vasanas and samskaras of previous actions have already started manifesting, unfolding. That's why we are born. So, if you have a strong tendency, a natural tendency, which cannot be explained in the light of our present life experiences, then it means it is nothing but the unfolding of some samskaras from previous life. But there are certain samskaras and karma phalas which still remain unmanifest. It's called sanchita, means accumulated. They are not started manifesting. Mother says that if you do japa and meditation, which we will discuss in the coming sessions, all these karmas will undergo change. The effect of karmas will start manifesting. And not only that, even what we are destined to encounter, suffer or enjoy, also will change. So, these prarabdha karmas, for example, which are responsible for our present life and experiences, can also undergo change. The word prarabdha means prakashena arabdha, something which has already started manifesting, unfolding. So it is often compared to an arrow that has left the bow. Suppose an archer is shooting an arrow. He has no control over the arrow which has already started moving towards his target. The arrow has the archer cannot do anything. But suppose a strong wind blows, then the arrow need not hit the target. The arrow, its flight can be deflected in another direction, so it need not hit the target. Now, if a person prays or does good karmas, some noble deeds, some services, something good for others, or for his own good, what happens? It's like generating a strong wind. That wind will deflect the arrow which is still moving towards its target. And of course, this comes from Shankaracharya's commentary itself, is a find beautiful synthesis of human effort and God's grace. So, if a person is destined to suffer a tragedy, the nature of the tragedy will be reduced, its intensity will be reduced, can be completely neutralized. The archer has no control over the flight of the arrow. But if a strong wind blows or another object comes in between, blocking the arrow's flight, then also the arrow need not hit the target. So if a person does meditation, japa, these are all different kinds of activities, or even does some good physical activity, any noble activity without a selfish purpose, what happens? It's like generating a wind, a strong storm that will deflect the arrow and that will reduce the intensity of prarabdha karmas and its results. This is one important aspect of karma yoga which Mother tells again and again. In one context, you can find an incident which I may quote later. It so happened that a group of Western tourists were visiting Benares, in fact, Saranath it's called. So they were staring at the old Buddhist monasteries, which were all destroyed during the Muslim Arab invasion, some of them were destroyed. So Mother was visiting Benares, Saranath, the site of the ancient Buddhist monasteries. Actually, that's very close to the place where Buddha did his first sermon in 560 BC. So it was observed that some Westerners, European travelers, were staring at these ruins of the old Buddhist monasteries. So Yam was one of the disciples. Sri Ramakrishna was present along with Mother during these travels. So they asked Mother, why are these strangers looking at these ruins? Then Mother said, they were the people who once built this place. So that's now they don't recognize that. So that's one important aspect of the effect of prarabdha karma. And agam is the sanchita karma, becoming prarabdha karma and expressing itself as an interest in certain events associated with your own life in the past. So Mother says, every spiritual practice is like an effort to block the flight path of the arrow. Do the master's work, and along with that practice spiritual disciplines too. Work helps one to keep off idle thoughts. If one is without work, such thoughts will rush into one's mind. So often Mother talks about our tendency to do mischief when we don't turn our mind and senses into positive channels. This is a very interesting which I will continue again. How can one's mind be healthy if one doesn't work? No one can spend all 24 hours in thought and meditation. So one must engage oneself in some creative work. It keeps the mind cheerful. So if one is without work, such evil thoughts will rush to the mind. The point is, mind cannot remain idle. We can keep our physical senses inactive, but we cannot program our mind and we cannot keep our mind idle. In fact, one of the important statements in the third chapter, Karma Yoga, is Nahi kasikshanamabi jarudishtadi akarmakrid karyadehi avashak karma sarva prakriti jaihi gunaiki. It's a great statement in the Gita. Lord Krishna says, mind cannot remain quiet even for one kshana. One kshana means one fragment of split second, so to speak. The smallest conceivable unit of time is kshanam in Sanskrit, in Buddhist tradition also. So mind cannot keep quiet for one split second. So if you do not engage the mind in some creative pursuit, mind will seek its own natural pursuit, natural vocations. And that may be not good for you. That's why mother says, do the mother's work. And along with that, practice spiritual disciplines too. Work helps one to keep off idle thoughts. If one is without work, such thoughts will rush to the mind. So that's why one should always recollect God and pray to Him for right understanding. How many are there who can meditate and practice japa all the time? At first, they earnestly practice these disciplines, but their brains become heated in the long run by sitting constantly on their prayer rugs. You have this happening. When we are not ready for long hours of meditation, we may sit straight. And then what happens? People who practice sitting straight as some kind of a gymnastic exercise, what happens? They suffer headaches because nervous system gets tightened, and that causes fatigue. And then that's why after long hours of meditation, I've seen some people suddenly rushing off, switch on the TV because they want to let up the steam. If after sitting meditation for a long time, if a person goes and reads Bible, Dhammapada, or the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Bhagavad Gita, it is fine. But if a person finds a sudden need to let up the steam and open the TV, that means actually you should not sit for a long time in meditation. That's why mother says, how many are there who can meditate and practice japa all the time? You find many of these mothers' instructions are not found in scriptures. That's one unique aspect. I should have repeated at the beginning itself. Many of the statements coming from mother you find in Swami Yatiswaranandaji's meditation and spiritual practice, who was a disciple of Brahmanandaji. So where did mother learn all this? We have many books we can read. So that shows when you reach a level of spiritual progress, you develop a unique instinct, a spiritual instinct, what you call spiritual common sense, that gives you direct access to many of the problems of human mind and many of the problems of human activities. So then mother says, but their brains become heated in the long run by sitting constantly on their prayer rugs. They become very vain. And I've seen this happening not too long back, 6 months back. A gentleman came from one of the Latin American countries. He was recommended here. He stayed for some time. He was supposed to stay in the old temple for a week, but the Swami who recommended him told me that he wanted to meditate. The old temple is a sacred place. What he did, one day he meditated for a long time in the temple. And then he sat in the dining hall and was talking, how much Sri Ramakrishna has done, what have you done? He was addressing devotees who was associated with Ramakrishna Mission, Vedanta Society for 30 years, 40 years. He had meditated for 1 hour continuously. Immediately he came out and proudly proclaiming, see, how much have you done? And then from the next 5-6 days, he was wandering all over the city. Now, if you want any proof of the wisdom of mother, the deep insight in the human mind of a spiritual seeker that you find in these pages, you can find this happening all over the place, everywhere. So they become very vain. What happens? But how to avoid this? We must make our mind ready. We must prepare the mind ready. So, you should prepare the ground properly. Then only irrigation is useful, as I mentioned earlier. Before we irrigate the field, all the weeds and grass and stones should be removed from the field. Then only it helps if you irrigate the field, or when rainfall will be helpful only if the field is ready for irrigation. They also suffer from mental worries by reflecting on different things, even while sitting on meditation. It's much better to work than to allow the mind to roam about. For them, the mind gets a free scope to wander. It creates much confusion. So how to prevent the mind from wandering about? Keep the mind focused on some creative, constructive work. Constructive work need not necessarily mean physical work. Reading a good book, doing something good for others. If we can't do that without selfish motive, do with selfish motive something noble and good. Because that will help us to graduate to the next stage of evolution. Long years of good work with a selfish motive will help us to evolve a mind, a higher mind, so we'll be able to continue doing good without a selfish motive. But we should begin at the kindergarten, primary school. So something noble, good. So it's called an evolution and sublimation of ego. Ego, some people make this statement, oh, I want to be, it's wrong, we should not have ego. It's totally foolish and stupid. Because ego is our friend. If we cannot suddenly say, no, I will be total free from ego. First, we must develop a good ego, a positive ego, a friendly ego, a spiritual ego. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. So first, this ego should be made friendly, a helpful person. Let us divert our arrogant ego into, let us say, a proud ego, proud of doing good. So Sri Ramakrishna says this, uses a strong language, let this ego be God's servant. Ego can be given a promotion, ego can be given a sublimation. So this ego should be given a promotion, spiritual promotion, doing something good. And slowly what happens, continuous good activity with the proud ego will help us to continue good activity without ego. So ego slowly becomes sublime, purified, then it ceases to exist, then it disappears. We cannot all of a sudden start doing work without ego. If you want in recommendation, Lord Krishna said, na buddhi vedam janayed ajnanam karma sanginam. Yoshe sarva karmani vidvan yukta samachare. Na buddhi vedam janayed. But do you know what it means? Suppose a student is working hard to get a high grade. A professional is working hard to get a promotion. You are doing something good with a definite motive to achieve grade. Tomorrow somebody tells you, no, don't have any goal in mind. You have to plan, you have to a definite plan, a target, you have to achieve certain things within a few days, deadline is there, a schedule is there, you have to practice, you have to reach the goal. That's what you're trying to do. Somebody is trying to get to MIT or somebody, university, is working hard. Suddenly you tell him, no, don't have any ego. You should not think of any goal in mind. It's okay for a Buddha, or maybe even for a Gandhi. Gandhi was different. Gandhi had a definite high motive. He worked hard for that. So, what what Lord Krishna said, na buddhi vedam janiyed ajnanam karma sankinam. Those who are now engaged in some kind of activity with a definite purpose and motive, don't suddenly tell them you should start doing work without any definite motive. Try to give a promotion to your motive, a higher motive, higher ideal. That's a beginning of evolution and sublimation of ego. That's why it's much better to work than to allow the mind to roam at large. For when the mind gets a free scope to wander, it creates much confusion. So that's why my Naren thought of these things and wisely founded institutions where people would be doing disinterested work. Mother is referring to Swami Vivekananda. In fact, in one context, some monks, Brahmacharya, came to Mother and told her, you see, in our order we have to run schools and hospitals and colleges, a lot of work to do. But the monks in other tradition, they don't do much. They sit somewhere, and they spend a lot of their time in collecting alms. That's there, of course. So, and then mother told them, look here, how else will you start your spiritual life? Right now the mind is not ready to be a Buddha. Even look at Buddha. You know, when Buddha had this problem, he found the face of an old man, a sick man, a dead body being taken to the cremation ground. And then he left his place, his palace, walked 1,200 miles, came to Bodh Gaya, sat under a tree, and he had a strong determination, a goal, a purpose. He did not say, no, I don't have any goal to achieve. He said he had a definite purpose to achieve. Ihasane sushudu me shariram tugasti mamsam cha vilayam cha yadhu aprapya siddhim bhujanma durlabham naivasanat kaya madaschalishide. It's a verse from Buddha Charita. You know what it means? Buddha had a definite purpose in mind. He said, I shall sit under this tree, on this seat. I won't get up from here till I achieve the highest spiritual goal, which can be achieved only after long years, different life cycles of spiritual evolution. With the definite purpose in mind, as an MIT grad, somebody preparing to go to MIT, Buddha sat under the tree with the definite purpose. Then he became Buddha. So you should have a higher goal to begin with. Then you will be transcending that level. So that's why Lord Krishna says, na buddhivedam janiyed ajnanam karma sanginam. So in this process of evolution of ego, Mother says, spiritual practices like japa and mantra plays a very important role. So Mother says, the mantra purifies the body and prepares the mind. Man becomes pure by repeating the mantra of God. It is said, the human teacher utters the mantra into the ear, but God breathes the spirit into the soul. Now, again and again, in fact, Mother repeats this idea. How do we sublimate our ego? How do we evolve from the early part of our spiritual life to the higher level? So we'll continue the discussion. We'll have interaction now.
Whispering in the ear.
Which one?
Whispering in the ear.
Oh, what it means is, I shall explain this.
I just didn't hear it.
Yeah, I will try to repeat. Mother says, the human teacher, your teacher who gives you sacred mantra, will give you the verbal aspect of the mantra, the word. The word has a deeper meaning. The essence will come from God. So every mantra has got 4 dimensions. The grossest, the less gross, the subtle and the subtlest. Para, Pashyandi, Madhyama, Vaikhari. The verbal aspect, verbal dimension, what you hear, what you write, that is Vaikhari. It means the gross one, the word formation, the letter. At a higher level, when you repeat that, loudly it is called verbal. When you repeat it at the verbal level, it is called Vachika, it is called Madhyama. And when you understand the meaning and meditate in the meaning intensely, it is called Pashyanti. When you realize the essence of the mantra, it is called Para. So, in a descending order, it is called Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari. The highest level of mantra is when you realize the essence of the mantra. It is called the immediate experience. The lowest level, what you hear. So Mother says, as we evolve in our practice of the holy name, we also evolve in our spiritual life. So at the begin with, elsewhere Mother will tell you, I will repeat again, a person should have a strong sense of pride. I shall practice. I will not be lazy. I won't be lethargic. You should have a sense of strong determination. It is not ego. It is a kind of sublimated ego. And Lord Krishna says, every spiritual seeker, every devotee needs a strong willpower. Without that, you cannot take the first step. That sandushta satatam yogi yathatma dridhanishchaya, strong determination. Then as we evolve in spiritual life, this what you call apparent ego becomes spiritual ego. When you become spiritual ego, you can see the spiritual truth, divinity everywhere. So it's gradual evolution in our life. So Mother says, while doing good karma yoga, physical activity, reading books, meditation, chanting, along with that, when you practice this mantra japa, slowly you also evolve from gross to subtle. Okay?
Swami, you mentioned work as a means of occupying the mind.
Yeah.
But even during work, our mind can wander.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned the yamas and niyamas as guides for work. I
Yeah.
mean, so what should we do during work? Because we have to, even during work, our mind can be a problem. So
Yeah.
how do we handle their mind during work? I mean, like being sure that we are not creating violence, being sure we are truthful and so forth.
Yeah, that's why Mother says, work is needed, but work is not ultimate goal. So that's why when we aim at physical perfection of work, there's a problem. Then we engage in competition, rivalry, etc. Because I want to do this work to the best of perfection. Our definition of perfection stops at the physical level. When we look beyond that, beyond the physical perfection of the work result, and it should also give me contentment. It should also make me feel, well, I have done what I should have done. That comes only when we define work beyond the physical perfection level. Mostly competitions and rivalries and wandering of the mind becomes a problem only when we forget the fact that work should not be the supreme goal of life. Work is a means. We cannot help doing work. But work at the physical level is only the beginning of work. At a higher level, you may do your best and then you don't worry about it. So we should be able to develop a detached mind to work. Then we won't have any feeling of rivalry. Rivalry, competition, wandering and friction are mostly due to our wrong perception of the meaning and the scope of work. For a spiritual seeker, work has a different meaning. For a worldly man, it has different meaning. A spiritual seeker may do his best, accomplish the highest, he won't be overjoyed. And if his result falls short of his expected levels of perfection, he won't be depressed. So he can smile. He can smile when he doesn't succeed as much as he can smile when he succeeds. But when we define work and its result at a physical level, I may call it Kantian school of perfectionism, then what happens, the spiritual element is lacking. Perfectionism as an ethical code, it is good. It is certainly far better than laziness. But the point is, it doesn't leave any scope for our own spiritual evolution. Mother says, do your best. But at the same time, it's not the highest goal. When we do work with a spiritual motive, then we'll be doing work, but we'll be looking at something higher and transcendental. That helps us from depression when our works do not produce the expected result. Yeah. Any?
Good morning, Swamiji. Good morning. My question is, Yeah, you told earlier. You told about in karma yoga, the selfishness and selflessness. Why do we? Why do you be selfish karma while doing karma, and what is what we and how we can become selfless?
Yeah, thank you, wonderful question. So, to begin with, we must try to do something good and noble. We must avoid doing that could be harmful. That is the beginning. Then the rest will take care of itself. If you should pray to God and do something good, try to do something good. We may not always be able to do what we want to do. Even a willingness to make an effort itself will take a long way in spiritual life. In spiritual life, physical action and the willingness to do some physical action for good both have the same result. That's the difference between the physical and spiritual. At a physical level, you have to give something to somebody, then only it becomes useful to him. But at a spiritual level, even if you have a good mind to do good for others, that itself will have a purifying effect on your mind. That's the result.
Excuse me, sir, Swamiji.
And could you ask later?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you asked one question, thank you. Now it's somebody else. Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to Estel's good question of what to do during work to bring us closer to God. And I was thinking of that phrase you used of a mantra japa. And so during work, we can say spiritual truths and sacred sayings as we're working. And also we can just know that we are not the workers too, that although we tend to think we are, and I do, just to, as we work, to know that it's not really us who are doing the work, that there is a higher power, there's a spiritual presence that is actually there doing the work, and that we can think about that as we're working. And but I think it's so helpful to say sacred sayings, hymns, prayers as best we can while we're working, because it helps to uplift us and to keep out all those thoughts that we don't want to really have going on. And thank you, Swami, for the beautiful morning.
Yeah. Those of you who have any doubt on this, if you read the 12th chapter of Gita from 8th to 11th verse, there is a description in a descending order. From the highest stage is mentioned, the 8th verse. It is called, how to keep the mind always in God, then God will dwell in your hearts. And then you can practice this Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, ninefold disciplines, and then you will be able to reach a stage where you will be doing your work, but you will be doing for God. Mat karma paratattvam it is called. So, if we can bring the divine idea into whatever we do and think and speak, then every word, every action gets a spiritual orientation, a spiritual direction. That's the ultimate goal. But at the beginning itself, if we just keep some spiritual disciplines and try to do something good and try to avoid doing something with the opposite of it. That's why Mother speaks about the problem of negativity, but I didn't get time to deal with it. Later I will tell you. So I just dealt with it incidentally. The natural tendency of the mind to do mischief, to play tricks upon ourselves. That's mother deals with that. There's an inherent natural tendency in our mind, in spite of our full knowledge, but it's not good for me, still, and we would be happy to keep away from me, but we cannot keep away from it. So that is actually, from a yoga psychology point of view, it is the pull of strong accumulated negative samskaras. See, you can think of this. If we can do what we want to do, there will be no problem in the world. Really speaking. If we can always do what we want to do, there will be no problem. But in spite of our best efforts, there seems to be an invisible block, a mental block, this barrier that prevents us from doing what we actually sincerely want to do. It's called negativity, whatever it is. But mother also says it is because of samskaras, vasanas, etc. See, I didn't get time to read that portion. Western journalists visiting Sarnath, they didn't come to visit the ruins of the ancient Buddhist monasteries. But they were staring at it, they were showing a great interest. So M. Mahendranath Gupta, the chronicler of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, was present. So they asked mother, why are these people staring at it? Then mother could see far into their previous life cycles. So mother says, they were the people who once upon a time built these places. But now they are showing an interest in it. Now they didn't know, perhaps they didn't have any plan to visit Sarnath and watch this. That means good tendencies also can be helpful. There are people who cannot physically and mentally do anything evil. And there are people who cannot do physically anything other than evil. In fact, one of our villains of Mahabharata, his name is Duryodhana. And he expressed this in very powerful language. He says, I know what I should not do, but I can never stop for a moment from doing it. And I know what I should do, I cannot bring my mind to do it. He say, Janami adharmam nachame nivrittihi, janami dharmam nachame pravritti. I know what is dharma, what is the right thing to do. What to do, I'm helpless, I can't do it. And he says, okay, he talks about God is sitting, that is a false excuse. What he means is, his own inherent samskaras won't permit him to do what he really wants to do. So mother says, but there's a way out. We can, this japa or any noble act, if we go on doing something good, something which is not bad, then we cannot help being good one day. So that natural power of physical work, that's why I'm emphasizing the physical, because this is something everyone can do. You cannot program our mind. Our mind cannot be, you do this, mind won't permit you, mind won't listen to you. You can never program our mind. We can never manage our mind. We cannot control our mind. We cannot decide, predetermine what is going to be my next thought. No way. But we can decide what I'm going to do in which direction I'm going to walk. So at the physical level, we have a lot of autonomy and freedom. So why don't we make use of this freedom to do good, noble deed? That's mother says. Very simple and very practical. That's why in the silence work therapy. But there, a man suffering from manic energy, excitement, will be forced to do some physical work to keep him away from doing mischief. But mother says there's a spiritual element in it. Doing something good for others, it could be anything, any noble, even if you help a man to cross the street. The fact that it creates a positive tendency to your mind when you privately help a person to cross the street, a blind man, that day, I did something good. You get the feeling. What does it mean? The physical activity has generated a spiritual wealth in the form of some kind of contentment. Well, I've done something good. So mother says, we can always start at the physical level. That's the kindergarten. And then mother says, the most highly evolved person, the great incarnations and prophets and saints of the world, always kept themselves busy doing good for others. And that is also the beginning for every spiritual seeker. That's the thing. Yeah.
So, more of a confusion. So, there's this concept of Leela. It's God's play, everything. Now, you say Duryodhana knew what he should not do bad, but he's still doing. He wants, what good need be done, he cannot do it. So, and there is also a story that Duryodhana went to heaven when Arjuna and everything.
Only for a few minutes.
So,
and then they only for a very short time.
So my question is, what's your opinion on this play? If without Duryodhana there wouldn't be Bhagavad Gita. So if he had a purpose in one context, we today wouldn't be talking about Bhagavad Gita if there was no Duryodhana, and he wanted to go. So how do you rationalize this confusion?
Well, to begin with, it's a literary classic with a spiritual content in it. So going deeper into the literary criticism part may not make much sense from a spiritual perspective. But the question is still relevant because there are thousands of characters in Mahabharata, more than 100,000 verses. So this particular verse is quoted to indicate the pull of the accumulated tendencies, the human mind. But Duryodhana was not a very sincere person. He was trying to justify his evil deeds. That's what the later part. Of course, this is a part of a dialogue, in fact. Duryodhana was trying to justify his evil deeds. So, in the process, he also speaks about, he's mentioning incidentally the pull of the previous samskaras, which actually is a message for us. That means we can always physically do good things because we have freedom at the physical level. But Duryodhana had that freedom, he did not exercise it. So he was not true to his own mind. No, there is no one in the world who cannot do something good at the physical level. To think a noble thought, even to speak a noble word, may be a little more difficult, but to do something physical, even to clean a place, sacred place, to help somebody at the physical, it's not difficult, but that will not go unrewarded. Even the smallest activity will produce its result. Naki kalyanakrit kaschit durgadim tadagasi. Lord Krishna says, even the smallest bit of activity, a word, a thought even, also will have its effect. Because a conscious thought will leave a vritti. And vritti will produce a tendency and becomes a vasana. So, it is not possible for a sincere spiritual seeker to begin if she really wants, but there is always a conflict between what we want to do and what our mind doesn't allow us to do. But there is also a way to make our mind allow us to do what we want to do. It may take some time. Yeah. So what you find in Mother's teaching is a unique kind of spiritual common sense, spiritual wisdom, which in a way goes beyond any scriptures, but it's very much in tune with the teachings of scriptures. Not only, please remember, it is not about Hindu scripture. There are instances which I am going to quote again, On one occasion, Mother asked a few Western disciples, some American and British, Sister Nivedita, Betty Bennett and Miss McLeod, they were all visiting Mother. So it happened to be a Christian festival day. So Mother asked them to speak about the Christian wedding. So they translated into English, which somebody translated into Bengali, the oath taken by the bridegroom and bride in the Catholic wedding ceremony. Then Mother heard. She didn't know anything much about Christianity. Oh, the dharmic words, very wonderful. Her natural, spontaneous, instinctive appreciation of something good and noble in another tradition of which she did not know much. So this is the raw, the pure spiritual common sense, which a scholar will not be able to do to that extent. Many interfaith specialists won't be able to appreciate the way Mother appreciated with the hearty joy. She appreciated when she listened to the oath taken by the bride and bridegroom in the Catholic wedding ceremony. And she is from a village. She didn't know anything about other religious traditional interfaith. You can imagine that's a natural, spontaneous, pure spiritual common sense. Yeah. This goes beyond scriptures, Yeah. Yeah.
Pranam Maharaj. Mother, as you say, stressed on japa so much. I was wondering if you could tell us, did she give us any particular method or technique or how to do this japa that would make the practice more doable and more productive?
Yeah, Mother spoke extensively about practice of japa. You find, on the one hand, Mother says we must practice 20,000 times, encouraging her disciples to do more and more. On the other hand, sometimes she says it is better to do once with full attention and concentration and shraddha than doing any number of times. So it often depended upon the type of disciples who came to Mother. On one occasion, for example, some disciples came to Mother and told her, if since we are all your disciples, your grace is already there, so we don't have to do anything. So totally dismissing the role of human effort in our spiritual evolution. Then Mother corrected them, saying, see, how can it be? You look at me, I am myself doing so much of spiritual practices, japa all the time, So how can you say it because just because God's grace is there, my grace is there, you will get everything? You should do your own work. You should make your own effort. So Mother insisted on the role of effort, our own effort, to become grace-worthy. So we won't be able to enjoy grace unless we are ready for it. What we get may not be ours, only what we earn will be ours. Even if we get a lot, only that much which we deserve, we'll be able to make proper use of. For that we need to work, do our own work. On another occasion, some other kind of disciples went to Mother. From another perspective, Mother, we have been doing so much of sadhana, so much of austerities, still nothing happened. We have not realized God. We have been working hard for decades. Then Mother said, what? You have been working, you have been meditating. Does it mean that God should appear before you? Is God something like a vegetable or fish that you buy in the market? You pay fixed amount and you get back. So, the role of human effort and also God's grace. Then Mother, so on the first occasion, instance, Mother emphasized the role of human effort to make ourselves grace-worthy. On the second incident, the Mother emphasized the role of God's grace. We cannot bargain with God. I have done so much, so you should appear in front of me. That is also wrong. So you can find this harmonious synthesis of our own japa, our own effort to be grace-worthy, and also God's grace. You in the coming days, sessions, we will discuss more about this. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Taf Sri Rama Krishnarpanamastu.